Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name is Shawa, and I will be introducing the Real-Time project and how it can help you get a job in the data industry. Um, so here's the agenda. I'm going to spend about an hour and a half to discuss with you why experience is the most important factor when it comes to job search. And I'm going to introduce to you what the real life project may look like. Because I think when you go through school, you graduate from boot camps, typically, or maybe you did some self-learning. I think most of the learners will struggle to put experience, right, or relevant experience on their resume. And many haven't really got an opportunity to work on real life projects, so they don't really know how to get started when they're facing a real problem. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction to that, and then I'll show you how to sort of add real experience on your resume. And of course, you must care about how to get real experience. So we can talk about different ways, joining hackathons, freelancing, starting your own business, just to gain real life experience. And of course, WeCloudData has real-time project-based training if you're interested. So but before we get to that, I just want to let you know that we just published a new blog post. This is the job market trend for data science and engineering. I'm going to share the link with you, so take a look at it. We did quite a bit of data scraping. We collected thousands of jobs and did some analysis, and we plan to update this blog post and also roll it out to different cities. On a monthly basis, so you can definitely subscribe. I think if you would like to talk to one of our learning advisors, then you can fill out the form here, but you can scroll to the bottom just to subscribe to the newsletter. Okay. In this blog post, I think Alex, one of our project managers, he was sort of introducing the future of data science. Any thoughts on that? And yeah, we collected some some interesting data points. There are mainly four different types of jobs: data analyst, data engineering, data scientist, and also machine learning engineering. It sort of shows you the number of jobs we use for analysis. Um, we mainly scrape like the new jobs posted on a daily basis. So there's some pointers here. An amount of jobs out there. Up to August. Looks like there are definitely more data analyst jobs, data science and data engineer on par. Just about 2 months ago, I think I did a job market report webinar. At that time, like machine learning engineering was like a third of the data scientist job opportunities, but somehow like it definitely surged in the past few months, especially when a lot of companies would like to deploy their large language models and AI models in production. The demand for machine learning engineers and MLOps engineers will definitely increase rapidly in the future. Yeah, and then I think we did analysis on the educational requirement, and then the key skills required for different jobs, and years of work experience requirement and salary and those kind of things. So take a look at it. I think it'll be very helpful if if you would like to get some latest insight into the job market. Okay, so let's get started. There's some other links I would like to share with you. We have a Discord channel. There's some free data fundamental courses we're running, so you can join. We run free workshops from time to time. And then you can go to WeCloud Open, which is learn.weclouddata.com. We have free Python and SQL courses. And if you would like to stay in touch and watch the recordings, you can go to youtube.com/@WeCloudData. Okay, so let me send you these links and then we'll get started. All right. Usually before I start the presentation, I just want to hear from the audience, if you have brought any questions that you would like me to answer. So if you have any questions, I'll give you like 2 to 3 minutes. And I'll try my best to address some of the questions that sort of help me understand where you guys come from and what questions you have today. And then I can sort of adjust my presentations based on audience. So yeah, go ahead and send your question to the chat. Thanks, Gary, for the first question. I'm just going to paste them here in Notion so everyone can see that. All right, thanks for the questions. I'm sure more will come, but let me address some of these first, and then we'll move on to the main topic. But feel free to keep sending questions. I'll make sure I have enough time at the end to answer all of your questions. First question, I'm trying to transition from BI to data science. What are some tips to get hired when first starting out? Okay, so if you already have a BI background and you are switching to data science, I think first thing you need to, so there are actually some common skill sets, right, that are shared among between data scientists and BI developers or data analysts. I think you all know programming, know how to do visualization. The difference between BI and data science is that I think business intelligence tend to focus more on the data modeling and data storytelling and data exploration. So you communicate frequently with business through visual storytelling, building dashboards. And data scientists typically work on more advanced analytics, right? So instead of answering questions like what happened and why something happened, data scientists might be working on predictive analytics, right? Predicting. So if we know something happened, let's say customer churn, is a typical challenge for businesses, and the problem has become worse, and you're losing more customers. So BI will sort of look into what happened and why, and data scientists will build predictive models, and the predictive models will help us predict who's actually going to leave in the next 3 to 6 months so that the business can take actions, right? We can either do marketing campaigns or simply fix your product, but it's not that easy to fix product, right? But usually data scientists work with product managers to improve the product features, and they do a lot of A/B testing as well. So if you would like to get hired as a data scientist, I think it's very important for you to sort of, because when people look at your resume, right, they spend a couple of seconds. That is actually literally true. I've been going through a lot of resumes recently because we're hiring AI instructors and also teaching assistants. So I've gone through like hundreds of resumes myself, and yeah, I was actually just sort of trying to calculate how many seconds I spent on each resume, and it was literally just seconds. So it's very easy for people to take a look at a BI resume and think, okay, this is a data analyst, and then they will just pass. So you really need something that's more data sciencey to catch people's attention. If your resume stands out as a data science resume, and then people notice that you also have data analytics experience, work experience in the past, then I think you have a much better chance. But when they look at your resume, the first impression is that this is more BI focused, then the chance of getting an interview is very low compared to someone who's actually just new to data science. They don't have BI experience, but their entire resume is focused on data science. Sometimes I think this type of candidates may even have a better chance. So yeah, but how do you make your resume more data sciencey? I think the way you tell the story or write up your experience matters. We have data science bootcamp graduates. We typically ask them to have two versions of the resume. If you're looking for data analyst jobs, just remove most of the machine learning stuff. But if you're looking for data science jobs, then you have to put machine learning. And also projects needs to be end to end. So see if you're able to get any sort of predictive analytics opportunity, like opportunities to work on machine learning or predictive analytics projects in your current company. I know like maybe you're already very busy working as a BI specialist, but it's sometimes up to you to reach out to people from business, talk to your managers and say, hey, I have this idea, I have this skill set, can I do something like this? Maybe just do that over the weekend and you just prove to people that something might work. But not every, business will welcome this, and sometimes you might feel disappointed, or people may think that you're not really focusing on a BI job. But just try your very best. I've seen students who come from BI background, and after the boot camp, they actually just switch jobs like within the same company or get promoted to become a data scientist. This happened many times, and some of the students actually just like become more proactive and just built some models. Like no one's asking you to do that, but just give it a try and see if you can impress people. But if that doesn't work, then I think you have to work on portfolio projects or try some freelancing stuff, but try to add, as much machine learning data science experience to your resume. And that's the key. Yeah. And you also need to have the relevant keywords. For example, when you apply for a BI job, then you may actually add Excel and, those kind of data analytics tools. But when you apply for a data scientist job, just remove Excel. I just don't, even though data scientists use Excel a lot, but whenever I see Excel on the resume, that just, maybe I have bias, but they're definitely way more important or more relevant skill set you can put on the resume if you're looking for a data scientist jobs, right? So keywords also matter. But yeah, sometimes first impression is very important. Hope this helps. Next question, can we go over resources in terms of deploying projects that we'd be creating? The freer, the better, of course, but just an idea of being able to properly show results for ML data science portfolio projects. Freer meaning you don't want to spin up a server in the cloud, right? Because you never know when people are going to look at it. So it might cost you money. Okay, that makes sense. I think the way to showcase your data science project or BI project, right, is you need some sort of storytelling, and visualization will be very helpful. For BI jobs, building a Power BI dashboard, and then just make it public. And Tableau has, Tableau public as well. So definitely publish your dashboard and include the links in your resume. That will be very helpful. I was actually reviewing someone's resume today, and I was happy to see like there are 2 project links, but unfortunately, when I opened the Power BI dashboard, it's just not as strong. So it's not that helpful if your project is not good enough, right? So, but that's definitely a good step to take, which is to publish that on the web. Now, when it comes to machine learning and data science, I think it's more important to include 2 things. Let me write a note here. So visualization is the key. So sorry, I should say visual storytelling. Because it's not just about building dashboard if you're looking for a data science or machine learning job. But I think first of all, you need doesn't have to be PowerPoint, but you need to have a presentation and some sort of storytelling as well. Because when you write 5 to 6 bullet points to introduce the project you have worked on, the amount of time that takes people to understand what you're trying to do is very, very high. It takes people literally like 30 seconds to go through that, right? So people usually don't have the patience. But if you have a link, right, when you do self-introduction, you do cold calling on LinkedIn, if you show a link that points to the presentation, I think I'll be more interested to look at the presentation because and then I'll really quickly go through the 10-slide presentation and see what you've done. Because people are more used to that, or hiring managers, because whenever you do a data science and machine learning project, you're definitely going to do presentation to the business, to the technical team, right? You usually have a technical deck explaining that to the technical, to the data science team, but you also need to have a business friendly version that you present to the business. So that's what you're going to do in real life. Having a presentation, I think, will make it look more professional for sure. And then it's easier for people to understand what you've done because usually you have, some sort of summary, right? And if you were to build a dashboard, that got to be a dashboard that's explaining your models, right? So look into explainable AI. In Python, Jupyter notebooks, you can use, Shapely Value or SHAP or whatever packages to do model interpretation. That's useful, but that explains just one metric. I've worked with startups, right? Their entire product is basically to help an insurance company to build dashboards to explain machine learning models. There's so many things you can use visualization and dashboard to explain. You can explain all the features when you do feature explorations. Typically, data scientists do that in Jupyter notebooks, right? If you're sharing the notebooks with people, like sometimes, I mean, if they don't have a Python environment, they may not be able to see it properly. Like you're never going to send a Jupyter notebook to the business, right? So I think data exploration. So for example, if you have top 5, right, important features, can you sort of visualize the distribution? That's something you can visualize. The top features or important features, right? That's another plot. And the model accuracies. And there are a lot of metrics you can include in the dashboard to explain your machine learning models. So look into that. That's not something a data scientist would. I haven't seen this a lot in a portfolio project, but when it comes to real life machine learning projects, right? The ML ops, for example, machine learning engineers and ML ops engineers sometimes need to monitor the models in production. So there are actually a lot of open source tools they work with to even visualize your model performance, check out the biases and things like that. So definitely look into that. I think that will make your portfolio look much stronger. My worry, right, when we work with the students is that whenever you look at the resume, it's all about, okay, I have a machine learning model. I tried this algorithm. Accuracy is 90%. And these are the top features. And then you have worked on, the student have worked on 3 to 4 projects and it all looked the same. They're just trying to say what I did, but these are all technical aspects of the project. But real life projects are never about your model. Yeah, accuracy is very important, but business doesn't care. You are hired as a team to produce really good models, but you need to help the business to understand how to use the model. And so you sort of build that confidence. And so people are willing to use the model. So yeah, keep this in mind. I think that will be helpful. In terms of the tools, I think it's probably going to cost some money. So the cheapest way to get started is just to build a dashboard and take a screenshot and save that as an image or PDF, put it on Google Drive, include that link, but don't use a very long link, use a short URL and just include that so people when people click on it, it pops up the image so people can see the dashboard you built. So you don't have to host that in the on a website. But I think if you use Streamlit or something, some other tools, and deploy that in the cloud, it's going to impress people, but it's going to cost you maybe 20, 30 bucks a month. So it really depends on how long you're in the job market. Another way is just to write a blog post and to explain what you've done. That's even better. Okay. What are the must-have certificates to get a job as a data analyst? I would say you don't need a certificate to become a data analyst. If you're talking about like a diploma program or a master's degree, well, those are worth it probably. But if you're talking about like online certification, I don't think it matters. I think having a portfolio project and publish 3 to 4 of those dashboards on Tableau or Power BI, or maybe 2 of them on Tableau public and 2 of them on Power BI. That's the best way to showcase your experience. And of course, the projects needs to be interesting. Try to find some interesting data set and problem that not many people have worked on, or even better, if you can scrape the data yourself, that would be amazing. So that would be my recommendation. Don't I shouldn't say this, but if the purpose is to spend 2 months just to get a certificate, it's not worth it. Just spend 2 months to work on 3 more projects. I think it's going to help more. Okay. A follow-up question might be, how important is it for us to show successfully deployed projects or employers' principal interest in our coding skills? Yeah, I think I sort of touched on this already. So you can deploy that either on Google Cloud, or you can use Streamlit to deploy that in the cloud, running on AWS EC2 instance. There might be some portfolio presentation, like some website that host portfolio projects. I've seen that before. Maybe you can try that as well. But definitely, if you would like the employers to see the code, you need to upload that to GitHub, right? But again, whenever you have things in GitHub, make sure that it's well annotated. You need to have like a README file or a project summary that explains what you've done. And you need to make sure that the code looks nice. I've reviewed Jupyter notebooks on GitHub, and it has a lot of error messages in it. I don't know why, but but it doesn't look very professional, right? So just be careful. How does real-time project training work when one is still learning the skills to become a data analyst, engineer, or data scientist in the boot camp? Will we not be able to work on a client project effectively until after completing the boot camp first? That's typically how it works, I think. We have full-time and part-time boot camps for the learners in the full-time boot camp, because they will complete the boot camp in 3 months. They will finish the 3 months training and then start the real client project. But for learners in the part-time programs, for example, the data engineering program, it has 3 courses. The data engineering bootcamp starts with data warehouse or analytics engineering, and then it moves on to big data engineering, and then data lakehouse and real-time data processing. So there are 3 courses. And typically when the student complete the first course, which is typically like 10, 11 weeks, then they should have the AWS, right, Docker, and I think analytics engineering, and maybe some Airflow skill set, so that they can get started with the real client project. But some students will wait till they finish the midterm before they start the real client project. So yeah, and then we've also seen students in the data engineering bootcamp, they don't have the data engineering skill set yet, but they can start with BI. Because there's a big overlap between BI and data engineering. So the student might actually just get started with some data analytics project, building dashboard before they're able to work on data ingestion, automation, and big data. So this is how it works. I'm looking for a software development role, career switching, but I figured the ideas about how to use a practical project, get my resume noticed would be relevant. Yeah. So it's just, I think the same approach doesn't really, it's not really limited to finding data jobs. I think it's the same. Interestingly, I think data projects like the real projects are harder to find because whenever it touches like the client's, whatever customer data, it's very sensitive. So they'll need to make sure that you can actually produce value before they can give you the data, and you probably need to sign NDAs. So it's very formal. But when it comes to software engineering, I guess it depends. If you're doing web development or UI UX design, I think it's relatively easy to find this type of work, freelance work, because the worst case is that the company just give you some directions and you build a bunch of stuff and then they don't use it. But they are not running any risks. So if you're doing software development, I think it's relatively easier for you to get a freelancing job. Are there any bridge roles that could lead into a data analysis career? What that might involve some basic data analysis tools, SQL, Tableau, maybe project management or data coordinator. I think you can just go to data analytics directly. Our BI bootcamp, is 3 months. Most of the students will be able to find a job after learning all the skills. So I don't think you need a bridge role. It's, as you can see in this blog post, there are definitely more data analyst jobs out there. But of course, the hard skill requirement is lower compared to data science and data engineering. So it's also very competitive. I'm trying to find that slide. Sorry, that chart. But you get the point. So there are more data analytics jobs out there, right? This one. Currently there are 2,600. But yeah, so I don't think you need a bridge role. Just work on projects and you should be able to find a data analyst job directly. That's just my understanding. Project management is not really going to help you get a data analyst job. I've seen data coordinator jobs, but honestly, I'm not very familiar with data coordinator job. I don't know what that job entails. Maybe I have to look at the job description, but there are a lot of data entry jobs out there. I just don't think those are going to help you get a data analyst job because you're not doing data analytics. So data entry jobs is not going to help you that much when it comes to finding a data analytics job. Okay. All right, cool. I see more questions, but I'll definitely get back to those. Now I would like to move on to the main topic. Why experience is the most important factor when it comes to job search. I think there are a few factors, right? So when hiring companies make a hiring decision, a lot of times it's not just about finding the person who's the most skilled, right? Because if you want to find the most experienced and the most skilled candidates, that candidate might be very expensive, right? And a lot of time it's actually about risk control. When I go through some, like a lot of sorry, I should not show some of these contact information, but let's say I'm hiring a assistant instructor, right? There are a lot of, we receive like a couple of hundred applicants, right? So it tells you how competitive this is. Like for an assistant instructor role, there are a lot of very qualified people. But this is a part-time job, and that's why people are sort of into like side jobs. But there are a lot of competitive, like strong candidates out there. So from my perspective, I think I did some sort of filtering. You can actually just right, you can change someone's status on Indeed to be reviewed. That means you plan to interview this person, and then as I go through hundreds of them, I realized that I approved sort of like 50 candidates already, and that's still too much. So I have to go through another round of review of the resumes before I start to reach out to people and interview them. But I can tell you there are a lot of those that I really like their background. So it's very competitive, even for a part-time job. From my perspective, it's about the risk. I care about whether someone can actually teach, but also when they say they have this skill set, I want to make sure that they actually do have the skill set, because it's very easy for people to add relevant keywords. Everyone knows that keywords is important in order to pass the ATS. But how do I even tell, like, if this candidate actually has the experience I'm looking for, right? And then I start to notice that a lot of those experience and those keywords are from online courses they've taken. It's from the research, like their experience in school as a research assistant, or maybe in their PhD research, right? For me, those are not the best experience. Those are useful experience, but I'm really just looking for one person who can teach with us, right? So when I have 50 candidates, good candidates I can sort of talk to, and then I'm focusing on like someone who actually has the experience to implement large language models, for example, right? Doing fine tunings. And then research experience might be less relevant in this case. I want someone who actually can be hands-on. So when they teach the student, they know what they're talking about, right? It's not too academic. So it's all about lowering the risks, right? It's not about hiring someone who's most skilled or has the best degree, right? One main reason is that, well, after we hire this person, how much time I need to spend on training this new hire? Let's say it's a junior job. Do I need to spend a lot of time training this person, right? Because most of the hiring managers nowadays are busy. Right? Like companies go through rounds of layoffs, and the hiring manager used to have like, a team of 10 people and 3 of them are senior. And now when they hire someone, it could be the senior data scientist providing some training and support, but now like it's down to 5 people. And the hiring manager will have to provide training, spend more time on training. Training is very important for a new hire to get up to speed, right? So they're looking for someone who can, who has relatively lower training costs, which means if you've been there and done similar work, that will be great, right? And that means less hand holding. Sometimes, maybe you have gone through boot camps, so you do have decent skills, but what about the problem solving skills, right? Because in real life, it's not just about using the tools, it's about how you apply them. And when you start to apply the tools on real life data set, you just get stuck on things. Like you run into error messages, or sometimes things just don't work. And as a manager, do I need to step in and help you debugging things, right? But how do I even tell from the resume that you can just get things done without too much, hand holding? And unfortunately, certification is not going to work. It doesn't tell me you have good problem solving skills, because when you do AWS certification, whether it's AWS specialized machine learning certification, like you don't really do problem solving. You don't really write code, and you can pass those exams, right? But that still doesn't tell me that you can do the work. So the best way to show that is projects, right? Whether it's real client project experience or past work experience or your portfolio project. But everyone know that they need to have portfolio projects. So how do you stand out? It needs to be interesting portfolio project. It needs to be more complex, right? The scope needs to be bigger, so that I sort of know that if you want to pull it off, this end-to-end project, you've definitely spent a lot of effort on it. Right? You've definitely run into a lot of challenges, and you can actually pull it off. And then I'll be more interested in asking you all kinds of questions about the project. So that means project experience is very important. Okay. Another aspects of experience is that communication cost can be very high on real life projects. So if you don't know how to communicate or how to work with people, that sometimes it's worse than hiring someone who's less skilled. So having real experience is important, because people sort of know that, okay, you understand how to take requests from the business side and how to sort of break it into like, technical requirements, and then start to execute on it. And or whenever you get stuck or when the requirement is not clear, you know how to clarify things. And I can tell you this is extremely important in real life projects. And sometimes you get frustrated because for example, some consultants, they just go ahead and do their own thing. They don't communicate with you. 2 weeks later, when they come back and report the progress, it's just not what you're looking for, right? This happens a lot. But the candidate or the consultant is very skilled. The resume looks amazing, but you get frustrated very frequently when you collaborate with this person, right? So that's why, having real experience is also very important. That lowers the risk as well. And also time to value. I think these are all related. Like it's ultimately it's just lower risk. Um, how soon can you produce value, right? So I think that's why experience is very important. Okay. All right. So what does a real life project look like? And when you start to build your portfolio project, or when you start to work with someone on a freelance project, I can give you a high level introduction. I won't be able to go into details, but usually when a project gets started, whether it's a consulting project, so you're working with a client that's paying you, or when you're working internally, in a data science team, and then you got requests from the marketing, from the product team, right? So the data science team usually work as an internal consulting team, right? Because they're helping different teams and different line of businesses to solve their data challenges. So you're like consultants, so you're always working as a consultants, unless you're the data scientist that just work with the product team on building product features, then you probably be more focused on building data pipelines and also training machine learning models that can feed into, let's say, a recommender system, right? But usually when you work on predictive analytics, taking requests from the business, it usually starts from the business requirement, right? I'm hoping I can give you some inspiration. So when you start to work on even if you don't have access to real client project, and when you start to work on your portfolio project, try to think about these, because that's important, right? So typically starts from the business problem. You get a request to build a machine learning model to predict churn, right? Customer churn, or something fraud detection related. Well, that's because the business is losing customers, right? Or the business is losing money because of fraudulent transactions. So that's a very broad business statement or business problem, but you have to sort of drill through to understand what the real problem is. So that actually requires you understanding not the business requirements, but also how the marketing team work overall. So when I used to build and lead a data science team, I noticed that at the very beginning of some sort of projects, I have to spend a lot of time reading documentations. Because sometimes if you don't understand how marketing team in your company do marketing campaigns, or how they actually talk to the customers, whether it's through emails or through online chat or through some platforms, it's very hard for you to understand how you can actually add value. A lot of the data science teams in practice, they struggle to actually create real value for the business because they just couldn't understand the business process, and that's very important. Okay. So you need to understand the business requirements, but if you're working on a consulting project, the client usually will have a kickoff meeting with you, right, to sort of tell you what they want, or tell you the business pain points, right? Try to understand the pain points. And then before you can actually tell them how you can help them, I think you also need to understand, you know, how to understand business pain points. You also need to understand how the data generation process, like how are we collecting data right now, right? What kind of business activities or business processes will generate data? Where do we find those data? And if you work as a data science team manager, you'll notice that you're often in those meetings with IT, with the business, trying to figure out like where does data even come from, right? Because whenever you start a project, you need data. Is data sitting in a data warehouse, right? And this is very important because later on, when the data scientists do data preparation or filling missing values or doing feature engineering, like understanding how data is generated is very important, because if you don't understand that, sometimes you're going to make the wrong decisions when it comes to data cleaning, right? And that's going to have a ripple effect, and your model is not going to be very meaningful if you don't prepare the data properly, right? So how do you understand that? You have to basically have meetings, right? Talk to the business, reading documentations. Okay, you have to do a lot of research as well. That's like even before you start any kind of modeling. And then the next question is data. What do we even get data, right? Do we have data ingested, right? So you have to basically understand the data lifecycle in your company. Where do we find data, right? How do we process the data? And then if the data is in a relational database or a data warehouse, and you need to look at, let's say, the data models. So you sort of understand how you're going to process these data, right? And how frequently is the data refreshed? Do you have enough data? Or if you want to build a model to predict, machine learning model to predict churn, you want to understand, you know, is the data generated in real time? So does that mean you need to have some sort of real time predictive model, or is the data, you just need a model that's refreshed on a daily basis? So there are a lot of small decisions you'll need to make along the way, right? And of course, you need to understand how. This is probably the most important, like how the models are going to be used by the business team or the product team. Okay, that help you decide how you're going to deploy the model. Are you just going to, ask for the machine learning engineer or data engineer's help to help you automate the model prediction on a daily, weekly basis? That's very common. Or do you actually need the infrastructure to sort of build an API and do model serving? Whenever you do model serving in production, that means you need to do model monitoring, you need infrastructure, you need CI/CD as well. So that's MLOps and DevOps. So there are a lot of things you need to consider, right? And of course, data. So sometimes you have data, sometimes you don't have data, right? So where does data come from? And do we have a data model or dictionary, right? Because when you start a new project, you may get access to some new data sets, new tables. You don't really know what those columns mean. So you need a dictionary, and you also need to talk to someone who's familiar with the data. That process sometimes can take days or even weeks. And you have to do some sort of data profiling, for example. Once you get access to the data, that's data exploration. But that's not the typical data exploration you're going to do for a machine learning project. You just want to know, like, last year we worked on a project which is building a data warehouse for a client. And the first task for some of the students involved in the real client project is that just write some Python script. We have 4,000 tables, right? We want to know how big these tables are, how many records in each table. For each table, sometimes they have like 500 columns. I want to know, are there any columns that have no values, right? You have to check out the data types. You need to do the profiling, which means you want to know the minimum value, maximum value, the mean, average of each one of those columns. Even to a point where we even need to build a dashboard for that, because there are 4,000 tables. And there's no way you can do this in SQL alone. I know you can write stored procedures and stuff, but Python is going to be way better in terms of automation and scaling. And then we just did that. It has nothing to do with, the project hasn't even started, but you have to do data profiling. Because if you don't understand the data very well, you get overwhelmed. Like, because we were like, oh, I didn't walk into this project. Like, imagine that we're going to deal with 4,000 tables. And then after you do the data profiling, you realize that, well, most of those tables are actually empty. So it ended up being 200 tables, right? So data profiling is very important, and it can help the client find a lot of issues, and sort of, it's a warm up you need to do. But that's very important. So when you work on your portfolio project, right, you kind of have to think, like, what is the use case here? Like, is this really a useful project, for the business? If it's a data set you get from insurance, what's the pain point? What problem are you trying to solve, right, for the business? Imagine that's a real business project. Where does the data come from? Did you just download a CSV file from Kaggle, right? And one CSV file, maybe a training and a test data set. That doesn't make the project sound very interesting. It feels like an exercise, and it can show off your technical skills doing parameter tunings and stuff, but it still doesn't show people like the real experience, right? Interacting with people on projects and stuff. So it will be great if you can add more things, like how you did the data profiling, right? Do you have your data models well documented? So I would prefer looking for those projects that have like 5, 6 tables, and you load those tables into a relational database, and then you do data preparation using SQL, and then you can even have an ER diagram, right, to show the relationship among those tables. Those are the best data sets you can use for building portfolio, because it just make it feel like more close to the real life data problems, right? Okay. And then of course you want to do like, all the ETL and data cleaning. I'm going to skip some of these details, but as you can see, a lot of effort has already sort of been spent on the business requirements, the data requirements, even before you start the machine learning. I feel like these are the steps that are missing from most of the portfolio project. I know it's hard, right? Because you're downloading data from the web. So I think another better way to do portfolio is, or work on some sort of real project is like, can you do web scraping? Just collect the data yourself. Because whenever you do web scraping, you have to think about what website you would like to scrape data from, and what kind of analysis you're going to do with the data you collected. And that's a good process, right? For you to think about these problems, and that'll make your project very unique because no one is going to collect exactly the same data set. You have to decide what topic, or what website you would like to scrape. That will definitely add more value to your portfolio project. Okay. And then when it comes to real life projects, and also, project management is very important, right? So the interaction with the client. So daily stand-up meetings, right? Weekly reports. So if you have ever worked in a consulting or some sort of project management role, or you're part of the project management team, then you know that meeting with the client to clarify things, to give them the progress report is very important. It builds the confidence, and it will help you become successful. So, well, if you're working on a portfolio project, then you can't really do this. But at least I think having a project summary report will be very useful. That's something, I highly recommend everyone to do, if you're serious about job search. And I don't know, is it possible to manage your own project just as a real life project? There's something to do there, but I'll leave it to you to think about it, how how to include some of these, and maybe just work with someone, like 2 to 3 people team up on a real project, and you can even use GitHub, right, to collaborate. I think that will make it sound even more interesting, and that's why one of the suggestions I have is, if you would like to get real experience, maybe see if you can join some sort of hackathon, because typically you'll be working in a team. Even though those are not long-term project, it's still going to add value. Okay. All right. I'm skipping the fancy stuff, which is the actual data science and machine learning stuff, because I think if you have gone through training, you've joined a boot camp, or you've done a master's program, you know how to do the technical stuff. But that's not the most important thing when it comes to job search. As long as you have the right skills and you have worked on technical projects, I think people ask you a question about the projects you've done. So as long as you've done those projects, you can answer those questions, you'll be fine. But in real life projects, I think documentation is also very important. I think we're wrapping up a real project. And yeah, we had a meeting with IT today, was the business. And when you wrap up a project, it's all about documentation, because after you've built something, the client will take over. They will need to know, like, how to operate, right? And let's say we build a automated machine learning pipeline. They will want to know, like, when things go wrong, what should I do, right? They're going to read the manual. They're going to read the documentation. So being able to document things is very important skill. I know this is something probably everyone think, oh, I can do that. But I can tell you, sometimes you can get consulting project, because you can do, like, I remember we got a project because the client told us that you guys just do the best documentation. So that's one of the reasons why they choose to work with us. So that was interesting, something I learned along the way as well. But being able to do documentation, right? You can say on your resume that you're good at documentation, but that means you have the ability to keep things well organized, right? That's very important skill set to have. But everyone can add this, and then you just ignore that, right? When you're doing your own projects and stuff, because you think that's just easy. Who doesn't know how to do documentation? But then when I look at your GitHub repo, your code, your Jupyter notebooks, look at your dashboard, and then I can tell that you just don't know how to do documentation. So keeping things well organized is very important. And you definitely need to talk to someone to review your code, right? Even if your code is not very fancy, but you don't have a lot of like, object-oriented programming, writing a lot of classes, but make sure that people can actually just read the notebook and understand exactly what you've done. I've reviewed numerous like notebooks in the past. Most of them, if I don't know what they did already, then I get lost because there are a ton of visualizations, and there are a lot of code that's very repetitive. It feels like it's just a process. I'm reading through like their thought process, but it's not a finished product. So that's not very helpful. So make sure that you do documentation well. And that also means that when you're writing a function, right, the doc stream is also important because in real life, in collaboration, when people read the functions, the scripts you've produced, they sort of need to understand what this function is about. They can't always come to your desk and ask you, oh, what does this function mean? How do I use that? So that's why documentation is very important, okay? All right. So, and then when you deliver a project, right, to someone and you're going to, do, let's say, like some sort of, user acceptance testing, right? So that means you're doing presentation to the client and let them test the features, test the models. I feel like, model interpretation in this case is very important. And how do you make sure that your model, validates well over time and when it's applied to the new data set? I think the best way to do this is definitely to visualize the process of data validation, model validation. So adding some dashboard and visualization will be very helpful. But ultimately, you want people to understand the models and know how to do that. So yeah, this is sort of the process you can go through to implement a new project. And my recommendation for everyone here is that we'll see what's missing from your portfolio project and see if you can do something to add related experience. And I think that'll be very helpful. Okay. Okay. And how do you show real experience on your resume? I think that will be easy. When let's say typically when we write the resume, right? Let's say we have a one-page resume. For career switchers, I highly recommend just one page, a one-pager. You don't need 2 pages. In writing resume, a lot of times it's about just removing things, just remove the irrelevant stuff that will instantly fix your resume and make it look so much better. I was talking to one student the other day. I gave recommendation, but the student just don't want to remove something because he's like asking like, why do you think this is not important? Um, and but I think it's all about how quickly people can find value in your resume. So having 2 pages, that means the less important stuff is on the second page. And since it's less important, why do you even bother to have a second page? You just want people to see everything right away. So I would recommend just removing things like summary of qualifications, your self-introduction, soft skills. Those are not really important at least when I'm reviewing people's resumes. And I've talked to a lot of hiring managers. I would say most of them would agree with me. For example, like you may be like not very comfortable removing the soft skills because you may want to show off your leadership skills, project management skills. I'm not saying that you need to remove those keywords, but if you have a block here just to say I have these time management skills, leadership skills, it's such a waste of space. like assuming that you have one page, right, and you want to use that to impress people, then you should really just remove that. And when you describe your experiences, let's say you have experience, right, and then let's say you have company A or maybe project A. Add soft skills and experience here, like add project management, right? You have project management experience, or dealing with client, take in, business requirements, and just add those experience here, because you're still going to hit the keywords, but it's going to make your project experience look so much more business friendly. Because most of the the resumes I've reviewed, when it comes to machine learning projects, you can only talk about, this is the data set I work with. I did feature engineering. I tried 5 different algorithms, and here are the model importance. And so it's very common to do it that way, but it's just sound too technical. And majority of the time, I'm not going to even look into that like in detail. Rather, you want to tell what the problem is, who you are working with on this project. Is it a client, right? Is it a CTO? And what's the business pain point? And because if you're helping the client to solve some sort of pain point, that's the impact. The impact doesn't really have to be, I help the company make $5 million more revenue, or I help the company save, something. But having these, if you can quantify things, that would be great. But even if it's just building a dashboard, if you tell people that this is the very first dashboard I built for this startup, that's so impactful. I can tell you, the impact might be way bigger than a machine learning model, because it's helping the company to shape their data culture. Now, everyone's looking at a dashboard. The amount of time that it takes them to get to some key information is so much faster. That's the impact. So I think adding these will be very important, even if you're just working on a regular portfolio project, and then let's say it's a insurance project, data science, but see if you can add a business sense into it. So project management, if you team up with someone, right, you can add project management experience, and you also collaborate on GitHub. So all of these will be helpful, but you want it to read like you're actually working on a bigger scope project, instead of just like you downloaded a data set and you just worked on that alone. Right? There's certain portfolio projects that's going to really help you stand out, but those might be like very outstanding, and that's exactly what the company is looking for. For example, right now, if you have experience fine-tuning large language models and build sort of or just fine-tuning models on a domain-specific data set, I think it's going to help you stand out. So that's generative AI, right? Or MLOps, and those, because a lot of companies are starting to think about doing that, and they're definitely looking for talents, and there are less talents out there who can do this. And of course, you're going to stand out. So those will be very interesting projects. But for most of the data science positions, right, the portfolio projects, people have done like that thousands of times, like those problems from Kaggle. So it's not going to help you stand out that much. Okay. Okay. So I hope this is helpful. And then I guess lastly, I'll just talk about where to get real experience. I highly recommend hackathon. It's going to take quite a bit of effort. The main reason is that you actually collaborate with someone. You work in a team environment, and usually hackathon, there's a well-defined problem. So I think that will be helpful if you have the time and energy to do that. Freelancing is going to be very useful. Even if you do things pro bono, as long as you get the experience, some people may not like, working for free. This idea is probably not the best, but it really depends on what you're looking for, right? To get out of, if you just need that extra experience that can help you stand out, I think it'll be worth it. So freelancing, but how do we get a freelance, type of work? you still need to have a portfolio. You still need to have, a dashboard, because why would people trust you enough to give you their data set or their data problems or let you access their database? It's pretty serious, right? So you still need to be able to convince people. But I think getting freelancing jobs might be easier than getting a job. But if you just go to Upwork, it may not work for you. So you have to do a little bit more preparation and some research. You can start from friends and see if their company needs help. And there might be a very small, let's say, a very small company, or even a salon, right? The owner is a hairstylist. Now, maybe reach out to them and say, do you want to build a customer service agent or a bot, right? There got to be something that you can do for them. And some people might be interested if, you're referred through a friend, right? Or you can cold calling people, but if it's someone that you don't know, then you definitely need to impress them in the first time. So you need to have, again, I think blog post. I don't think GitHub is going to work in this case, but blog post, some visualization, right? If you can do visualization, let's say help clients visualize their Google Analytics data and build dashboard, then I think there are a ton of companies out there that will welcome this idea, because typically they rely on Google Analytics or some other tools, but it's not flexible. But if you can help them build dashboard, provided that you already have some experience with Google Analytics data, then I think you'll be able to find some interesting work to do. If you can't get freelancing, I think starting your own business will be helpful, but maybe you're not not experienced enough to start a real business. But what I mean here is that just come up with an idea. Imagine you're starting a company, right? Well, that's not that easy, but right now, let's say if you want to get into AI, then the best way is just to build an AI product yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you can build an AI chatbot. But it has to, there are a ton of chatbot services out there already. You can find a ton of freelancers, but you have to serve a specific purpose. What pain points are you trying to solve? Right? I can tell you there are a ton of clients from us who's also asking about this. I need a chatbot. Can you build something like that? Right? But when you build that, it's not just about getting some data set, train a model. People actually will need you to deploy that. Because if the chatbot is not working in production, why would people still use it, right? So that means you need to get out of your comfort zone, as a data scientist, because now you have to juggle things. You have to learn a little bit data engineering. You have to learn a little bit machine learning engineering, know how to deploy things. And if you're not a software engineer, you're not a back-end, front-end developer, maybe you don't know how to build a bot from scratch, then just leverage something like Streamlit, right? It has a bot API that it can leverage to spin something up really quickly. But the goal here is to build, let's say, an MVP that it can use to show people. But even doing that as your portfolio project is going to help. But imagine that you're actually starting a business, you're going to get investment, right? Make it as real as possible. And then I think it's going to look so much better on your resume. Okay. And you can put real experience, and that's your own company, right? I think that may help. And then, of course, another option is WeCloudData has real client project based training, where we most of the full-time students, they already get access to the real client project, but you can enroll in the real client project only so if you're already skilled, you're struggling to get interviews, I think you can just enroll in the real client project based training, so you don't have to go through the boot camps anymore. You can just we have learners from other boot camps couldn't find a job, and they joined the real client project to get a job. Yeah, so what type of projects we do, or what type of projects you may get access to, it depends on the clients. So because all of these are real projects, so it really depends on what clients we have at that point. But typically we have BI projects, we have data engineering projects, and data science projects. For data science projects, we've done a ton of work in the supply chain, field, building a lot of forecasting. We built recommender systems. We've built bots so the students in the data science program, they're not building the bot, but they're using LangChain, they're using, BERT, those large language models to build, basic conversational AI stuff. And we've done work for Samsung. There are a lot of like large clients, but also a ton of smaller clients. For example, they're just getting started. They have a business problem, and you might be doing web scraping for the client. So you're actually scraping all the data, cleaning all the data, and then build machine learning models. So recently we started a project like that. There are also engineering focused projects, setting up cloud infrastructure, building data warehouses using Azure and AWS. So definitely there are projects that will suit your need. And when the students start the project, I think we're trying to formalize the process. So for students from the boot camp, usually we know how well they can do in the program. So sometimes we assign them to projects directly. But for the real client, like for learners who are just joining the real client project, then you have to pass assessment, right? To make sure that you can actually get enrolled in the program. And there will be onboarding training as well, because you may come from data science background, but the client will need you to deploy something. And you're not familiar with Apache Airflow, you're not familiar with AWS at all. So we have self-paced training materials, but you're basically just put on the project and you'll get pushed to learn really, really, really fast, and to make things happen. But you're not alone on the project, because we're definitely not just getting the student to pay for the program and then just do work for our client. That's not how it works. For every project we work on, there will be project managers who's dealing with the clients on project requirements, and they do high-level communications, make sure that the project can get pushed forward. And then we have project lead, who's leading the project. So the project lead will be involved in technical implementation. For the smaller project, we'll have project lead who sort of just manage the project. But we also, for the larger projects, then you're probably just joining as one of the team members to work with the full-time consultants who are more experienced. So you sort of just learn along the way. So you're definitely going to get coaching, and you're not going to get stuck on things and not being able to move forward, because we still need to deliver the projects to the client. So we do project management. There will be stand-up meetings. There will definitely be weekly meetings as well, but it also depends on the project scope. So in some projects, it might be more frequent meetings, like on a daily basis. Some project might be weekly. A student get to choose what projects they would like to work on. So typically students will let us know like 3 projects they prefer, and then we'll choose the best one for the students, so that they can go through the onboarding training, and then they will sort of be guided by the project manager and project lead to learn how to implement projects. And end of the day, when the students start to look for jobs, a lot of companies, when you get offers, you'll need a reference, right? Because you will need to prove to the employer that you worked on real projects, even though these are pro bono projects. We do provide reference check. For smaller companies, the hiring managers might be calling our project managers directly to understand what you did on the project. But when we work with bigger companies, it will definitely send you like a questionnaire or something. So we have to provide the reference to tell them that you actually worked on the project with us. So that's how it works. I think we're at the end of this session. I think I have some questions for answering questions. So if you have any questions about how to get started, how to find experience, or if you have more questions about the WeCloud program, I'm happy to answer your questions. I'll just pick up where I left off. Let me go through some of these questions. So there's a private question. As a graduating PhD student, sorry, let me paste it here. As a graduating PhD student in mechanical engineering, do you have suggestions on getting an intern, a data scientist? Yeah, I mean, if you can find an internship, that would be great. Internship always works. But as far as I know, some of the best co-op and intern programs out there, like this year, like the students are having challenges to get interns. But if you can find them, definitely you can. I think you should be open to find interns. These are sort of like the paid real projects, right? So definitely it will be useful. But the intern market is extremely competitive as well. So just be prepared to to apply for all of these jobs. Question from Nick: how important uh, are the DSA type of questions or knowledge for aspiring data engineers? Is it something to prioritize? Will this part be sufficiently covered in WeCloud Bootcamp? Answer is no. We cover, so we encourage students to do lead code. We actually recently, this is something we recently started to do. So we collected a ton of interview questions, like take-home assignments and stuff. So we sort of give students as quizzes and assignments or exercises, or sometimes it could be like a 2-day type of challenge. So during the program, students will be able to. We haven't rolled this out to all the programs, but the students will be able to basically just work on real life interview challenges, take home assignments, and that will give them a lot of confidence when it comes to real life interviews. But regarding the question, like how important is DSA? By the way, DSA means data structure and algorithms. In case you don't know, um, these are typical, leak code, right? Type of problems that you have to solve. I only recommend that if you are applying for jobs in a big tech company. Um, some data engineering jobs do require DSA in their interview process because they sort of hire data engineer as a software engineer. For example, at Twitter, I don't think they name people like data engineers. It's usually just software developers and software engineers who's doing data engineering work. Um, so it really depends. But in large companies like insurance company, banks, retail, they have a lot of data engineering positions. For those companies, like I don't think there's this big culture of doing DSAs. Most likely they're going to quiz you on SQL and Python because they absolutely just want to make sure that because what's important for data engineering is like you need to write really good SQL because most likely you're going to be interacting with the databases. So being able to write SQL well is important, right? So that's why the first round, if it's an online test, they're going to give you SQL and Python. They may actually use platforms such as HackerRank or LeetCode, right? To create a login for you so you can actually do the online test. You absolutely need to pass that. But most of those are actually not data structure and algorithm related. I don't want to misguide people. I think DSA is always something good to know, but it doesn't mean you're going to apply that every day in a data or even software engineers. You're not going to do DSA on a daily basis, even though that's very important, like skills you need to have or knowledge you need to have. And when it comes to optimization, writing more efficient code, sometimes these will be really important. It depends on how complex the project is. But for data engineers, I would say most of the time you're like just working with tools, right? SQL, Python, these are coding. But then you'll be working with open source tools, Databricks, Snowflake, Airflow, right? You're going to write SQL and Python code, but the purpose here is to sort of transform data or automate some sort of pipeline that really doesn't require like data structure. So I think most of the companies out there, they take a very pragmatic approach to interviewing, which is just to either give you SQL Python test or they give you a take-home assignment and you have to implement that. I've seen a ton of data engineering interviews that just give you a data set and say, load this into a database, right? Run that in a Docker container and automate it using Airflow or something like that. So those are more like practical, I guess. So I guess if you're aiming for the big tech companies like Meta, you sort of have to do DSA. And DSA is probably even more important than like taking a boot camp. But they are also just looking for your background. Like, do you have a computer science and do you graduate from a really good school? Do you have a master's? And if you have those, then as long as you can pass the ESA, I think you'll get a job, right? It's less about like the data engineering tools and stuff because they know you can learn quickly. And also, most of the open source projects you work with in other companies, like you don't use that in Meta because they have their own tools. So that was kind of interesting because they open source a lot of these technologies, right? So yeah, but for 95% of the jobs out there, I wouldn't say DSA is that important. Yeah. How can academic papers be effectively applied in practical settings using various modular libraries with a focus on minimizing time to market? Additionally, which firms are particularly interested in MLOps projects that integrate real-time problems? Um, that's a good question. So for the companies that are particularly interested in MLOps, right, I suggest you do research. So first of all, if you're applying for jobs on Indeed or LinkedIn, looking at the job description, you sort of understand what they're looking for, but still do research. You need to like see what type of business this is, right? Is this just if it's just a startup, that's been around for 6 months or 12 months and they just got their funding. And then you have to look at the product. If the product is, let's say, large language models and stuff, then definitely model deployment is important. So MLOps will be important because they're probably building some sort of SaaS product, which means they will need to scale that to different clients and making things running properly in production is important. So MLOps will be important. But if it's a large bank, then it has to be the team that's sort of just focusing on MLOps because they may mention MLOps, but if it's a data science team or one of the banks that we work with, they have like more than 80 different like small like data teams or teams that have data scientists. They have like 80 teams like that because they have tens of thousands of employees. I would tell you that maybe 78 of those 80 teams don't need MLOps, even though sometimes it may actually appear in the job description. They're looking for someone who these are nice to have skills. And they will tell you that, yeah, we have MLOps opportunities, but you never get to work on it when you join a company. That's unfortunate because things change rapidly. And there are a lot of politics. You don't always get to work on the most exciting part. So if you want to implement MLOps, definitely look for product companies, right? Companies that sell products, and that's why running things in production is way more important. Or if you look at the company's machine learning life cycle, you have to understand their business, what type of machine learning problems they have. Do they really like for marketing companies? They may help or consultant companies. They help clients to build models. Like, do they really need to operationalize those models? And most of them don't. So you're not going to get a lot of good MLOps opportunities out there. So you really have to do the research and uh, look up, their data scientists or ML engineers profiles on LinkedIn and see what they do in their job. Okay. If the question was about like integrating real-time problems, then most of MLOps problems are basically you have models deployed in real time, and then you're doing the real-time serving. Um, yeah, that's very different from batch-oriented prediction. So again, it depends on what type of product they have. If they have a product and they have a real-time problem, you should be able to tell by if it's a mobile application, you can download the app and you should be able to tell if they have a real-time problem. I start to see more and more company having real-time problems. And that's one of the reasons why data lakehouse is getting more popular, right? Because the time, like when you have a data warehouse in data engineering, you can't really do real-time stuff. And that's why you need to do streaming data analysis, and you have to do the real-time ingestion. Um, so maybe look at their data engineer job description and see if they have real-time pipelines that can sort of also. So I guess my point here is that when you are looking at the job, machine learning engineering job description, also just don't just look at the machine learning engineering job description. See if they have data science job descriptions, and if they have um, data engineering job description that help you understand their data infrastructure and the way they ingest data. And then you have pretty good idea like how serious they are with real time, right? ML ops and stuff. Okay. Um, Excel is baby's first DA project. By the way, I think Excel is always very useful tool. I use Excel a lot when I worked on data science project in the past, but it depends on like how and when you're going to use it. I think working as a data scientist, most likely you're going to extract data using SQL because you're dealing with like big data sets, right? And then when you do machine learning, you're going to use Python. You probably work in a Jupyter notebook environment. But whenever you try to communicate with the business, and the business want you to, let's say the business want to understand um, the top or the most important features, you're not going to give them a Jupyter notebook, right? They don't even know how to open it. So you need to sort of export everything into Excel and maybe do the visualization in Excel. That's going to be super helpful because the business teams are most familiar with Excel. So Excel is still very powerful. Again, tools are just tools. You need to use the right tool for the right audience. Yeah. Which language would you prefer more, R or Python? Um, it's personal preference. If you're doing your side projects, maybe a lot of people would prefer R. A lot of people get started with data science with R, but I think right now in the industry, Python is definitely more popular, I would say. So you'll find more Python jobs in data science, analytics, and data engineering. So when it comes to AI, it's all Python as well. If the company is more serious, they might go with C++ or even Java. But people rarely use R in production. Um, but R is still like very beautiful language. There are a lot of things you can do with it. So I've seen teams that actually prefer to hire R users because it's just team culture. Maybe the managers and everyone on the team, they all know R, then you have to go with R, I guess. But honestly, a lot of companies would list R or Python. There's like they don't like you don't have to just use Python because um, for companies that have production usage of machine learning, right? Everything is in MLOps will be containerized. So you're going to use Docker. If you're at that stage where you deploy things in Docker, then using Python or sometimes it doesn't matter because you can just deploy your R models in Docker containers and you can run that everywhere, or you can use Python. So some companies are very flexible. If you prefer R, then you can use R. And sometimes there might be some packages you need that's not available in Python, then you might actually want to use R. So yeah, but Python is definitely more popular in the industry right now. Definitely check out this um, I guess this job market report. It tells you that Python is probably more popular than R. I think yeah. So if you look at the top 15 data science job tech tools, Python SQL R is number three. But I think that's because whenever people mention R, they will say Python or R. It the actual demand for R in the industry, I think, is lower. Um, but in academia, it's R is very popular. Yeah. I think now with all the deep learning and large language models, Python is probably more dominant. Yeah. R Shiny is really good. I know there are companies out there that build a lot of tools or interactive like tools using R Shiny. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah. Do you have entry requirements for the job experience specific bootcamp where we work with PMs in a team? So you're talking about the admission requirement for the real-time project. So it depends on which program you're going to join. Oh, sorry, what type of projects you would like to focus on. But generally, when you join a the real client project program, we'll need to know like, do you want to focus on data science or data engineering or data analytics? So if your goal is to get a data scientist job, then of course you're in a data science track. But it doesn't mean that you can only work on data science projects once you're in the project, because um, in a real project, you'll be collaborating with people who work on BI, and people who specialize in data engineering, because we need to sort of do data ingestion, automate the pipeline. So you need data engineers. So you'll be working with data engineers and data analysts, and you might be doing data science. So that's a very good opportunity for you to collaborate with people and learn from each other. Um, but in terms of the admission requirement, if you want to focus on data science, then you have to pass a machine learning take-home assignment. So we'll be looking at the code and to make sure that you can actually build machine learning models. There will be an interview with our project manager. For BI, then you need to have a portfolio project, or you should have at least have built some dashboard before, because this is not a program that trains you like Power BI and Python from scratch. That's a boot camp. We have onboarding training, but the onboarding training is more about it's more project based. Let's say this project needs someone to know Docker and Amazon Web Services. And if you are the data scientist on the team, and if you're interested, and if you're going to work on that, then you have to learn AWS on the fly, and then we'll let you go through the training, or you can get trained on the job, so that we can. This is very much like real life, because in real life, sometimes working as a data scientist means that you also need to do a little bit of data engineering, because maybe the data engineering team is just too busy, or they're going to charge you, right? Because data engineering might be a different team. If you are going to pull the resource away from that team to build a data pipeline for you internally, they're going to bill you for that. It may cost your team, your VP, $5,000 or $10,000 just to build this data pipeline. And that's why sometimes you don't get that, and you have to implement that on your own. And when I used to work as a data scientist, I was like the first data scientist hired into a startup. And then the first 6 months was building data pipelines and running Redshift, setting data pipelines on AWS. And that's where I actually acquired all of my AWS skills. But I didn't expect that when I interviewed for that job. I thought I was going to build machine learning models. Then I sort of improved my data engineering skills. So for a smaller startup, that's very possible. So just be ready for that. But anyways, the question was about the admission requirement. Then yeah, for BI, you need to have a dashboard. We'll need to do a visual presentation and have an interview, basically. For data engineering, it's a little bit tricky, but there will be an admission test as well. And we're really looking for someone who can learn quickly, because it's kind of hard to find someone who can just know everything already. I think we cover a ton of skills and tools in data engineering bootcamp. So a lot of the data engineering students are pretty good. They can sort of, but still, like, I think after they finish the training in the boot camp, when you put them on real client projects, there's a little bit ramp up time for them to get used to how things work in real life, because there are a lot of decisions they will need to make. For example, like you want to build a pipeline for web scraping. How do you install Airflow? What type of deployment of Airflow? Is it just a sequential, or is it, the salary based, deployment? What type of EC2 or servers are you going to use, right? What kind of databases? How we do data modeling? So there are a lot of decision making you need to make, but that's the experience employers are looking for. Because imagine you're going to your manager and say, "Oh, what instance should I use? What tool should I use? How should I do the data model?" Then why would they hire you? They hire you to do the work. But if you've gone through that process, I don't think through the real time project you're going to like learn more technical skills, but it's more about building the experience, making mistakes, and collaborating with people so that you really you get more talking points during interviews, and then people trust that you actually do have the experience. And again, it all comes back to like lowering that hiring risk, and then people think that you're the right person, right, to work with. When you were talking about doing freelance and internships, were you referring to getting data science roles or data engineering out of DA? What market do you think is most competitive? Yeah, so it could be any type of data projects. We have AI projects as well. For example, with one of the really large media companies here, we're about to start doing large language modeling and exploring like chatbots and stuff like that. Um, Out of the DA, BI, data science, data engineering, which is the most competitive? Um, if you're talking about opportunities, all of these have great opportunities, right? There are definitely more DA jobs out there. Um, and and data scientist, data engineer, it's in good demand, definitely in good demand, but the job market is competitive. I would say BI, DA, and data science are more, relatively speaking, they're more competitive because there are more training opportunities out there for people to acquire skills. Data engineering is, I guess, less competitive because there's just not many programs out there that teaches you practical data engineering skills. And it's in good demand right now. So yeah, data engineering is probably less competitive, but it doesn't mean it's easy to get a data engineering job though, because typically data engineering jobs ask for more experience. And there's ML engineering, right? AI jobs. Those are in good, very good demand as well. Some of those roles will ask for a degree because you need to be able to read literature, read papers, and implement things. Um, so it really depends on the job. Many of them will be more practical, like can you deploy something, right? Can fine tune some models instead of just implementing something from scratch. Those will be research scientist jobs. Yeah. Uh, oh, sorry, sorry about the pronunciation. I meant Jupyter Notebook. Yeah. Drupal is, I think it's a programming framework, right, for web app development. So yeah. If we are choosing to take the full-time BIDA bootcamp starting October 2nd, will the real client project training start after December? That's a good question. So the BI bootcamp, it doesn't come with the real client project. So like you can get enrolled in the real client project. It's like in a separate package. So some students will join the bootcamp and at the same time get enrolled in the real client project as well. It really depends on how urgent this is for you. So I'll give you one example. There's students who just like absolutely need to start from scratch. They don't know SQL, don't know Python. If that's the case, then I highly recommend you just go through the training first. You pick up the skills, and then 3 months is really fast. And then like, after December or like in January, you will be ready to start the project. But we sometimes, like for example, in data science or other programs, or in DA programs, the student they actually already are very skilled in SQL. They're here to learn Power BI and real use cases. Then you just do what you're capable of doing. So for example, we have data engineering students who haven't completed data engineering program, but they sort of have some data analytics experience already. So in that case, they can begin with Power BI dashboard, or they join a project team. But instead of doing data engineering, they might actually just start from something else. It could be building dashboard, right, or running queries. And that helps them improve SQL as well, or they can do web scraping to improve Python. And then as they go through the program, let's say for data engineering student, after they finish, let's say the midterm, they will be able to work on a lot of different types of data engineering challenges. So yeah, I guess my answer is yes. If you have the right SQL and Python skills, or even Tableau, Power BI, then you can start the project sooner. Yeah. Based on what you're saying about taking data engineers and charging teams for usage, it sounds like there are still shortage. From the way you speak about data science or data engineering roles, it sounds like you don't get the chance in the industry to be at a junior role where you learn how to make decisions. Yeah, there are definitely junior positions out there. But I think in the last in 2022 or this year, I find it very hard for junior engineers to get jobs because the market is very competitive. There are a lot of senior talents out there, but I think this problem is going to get better because as far as I know, most of those people from the big tech companies, it takes a while for the market to absorb these talents. And most of my friends who got laid off from Meta, Twitter, or I've spoken to people. Most of them are actually all settled now. They either start their own companies, they join other startups, or they get rehired back to Amazon or Meta, or some of them just lower their salary to join banks and stuff. But yeah, most of them sort of already got absorbed. I heard that recently the big tech companies start to hire again. So definitely that means there might be more junior jobs out there. Yeah. Um, yeah. Is getting Microsoft certificate like PL 300 can cover my lack of experience with master degree in math? What is your suggestion, data analyst or data scientist, to find a job ASAP? Which bootcamp is better for me? What is Microsoft PL 300? I'm actually not familiar with it. Maybe you can tell me more about this certificate. Um, but you have a master's degree in math. That's great. If you're good with math, then I would recommend data science. But since you want to get a job ASAP, it's hard to tell, honestly. Usually I would recommend data science because I just think that you will be able to do it. Not everyone is able to do data science because we have worked with students who enroll in data science boot camps and then they sort of just change their mind during the boot camp because they realize that they're not interested in machine learning. There's a bit there's more math and they just don't feel excited, but they like visualization, so they will go back to sort of BI and do data analytics. So when they work on the real client project, then instead of doing machine learning, they will focus more on the dashboard and BI. um, but it doesn't mean like if you go for data analytics jobs, you'll get a job sooner because even though there are more data analyst jobs out there, but there will be more people qualified for data analyst jobs as well. Most people who graduate from a data science boot camp or programs will be qualified to do data analytics. So it's still very competitive. Yeah. Which boot camp is better? I, yeah, I think we can have a chat. You can talk to our learning advisors. I think you need to figure out like which is the right path for you. If you have done some online courses, then maybe you can tell us like if you're really interested in data science. Um, Data engineering is considering that you don't come from a programming or computer science background. I think data engineering is going to be a longer path, so you wouldn't be able to get a data engineering job ASAP. I'm pretty sure about that. But if you commit 6 months, and after you acquire all the skills, you may actually have a bigger chance of getting a data engineer job. But if you cannot wait or you're not interested in data engineering, then I would recommend either BI or data science, but which one to go with, like it's hard to say. We need to understand your background better and give you some suggestions. Yeah. Oh, the Power BI certificate. Um, yeah, as you know, the Eric is our BI program lead. He designed the whole curriculum. As he used to say that BI is probably um, the easiest one for you to get a job because it's very easy for you to sort of showcase what you've done. It's hard for data engineers to tell people that they have experience because most of the time they do coding. And they're not like a software engineer where they can actually build a software, build an app where people can check out their portfolio. It's more about, building the data infrastructure, and building the pipelines, but people cannot see it. And that's why for data engineering students, we recommend them to record a video of them implementing something or showing people their data architecture. So you need to be good with like diagramming and stuff. But for BI, it's very easy for you to show the dashboard you built, right? You can just attach a link and people will be able to see that right away. But you need to make sure that the dashboard is really, really excellent. So it impresses people when the moment they see it. It is actually hard to stand out because most of the student from the BI boot camp, for example, they will have some sort of projects and they have links. So I think the way you pick data sets and also the way you build the dashboard is important. But that definitely shows experience. So yeah. Yeah, if you guys would like to get in touch, this is uh, my name. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or this is my email. So yeah, we can talk to me if you're interested in our programs. Does the bootcamp support with employment and resume? Absolutely. So I forgot to mention this actually. So if you have a question regarding like why is WeCloudData different, I think there are three things that we are different. First of all, we offer opportunities to work on real client project, right? So that's experience building. And we have career support, but all boot camps have career support. Our career support is very different because we have like workshops where we like in the boot camp, we teach you how to write resumes and we help you with resumes, but um, referrals, I think all the boot camps have that. But we also have what we call like the one-on-one career mentorship. So the career mentoring basically, you get access to 6 months of career mentoring after graduation. You get assigned a mentor who work in the industry as a data scientist or a data analyst. They will be able to give you suggestions on your resume. So it's more one-on-one support. And then mock interviews. When you get an interview opportunity, they will help you sort of dissect the job description and tell you how to prepare. This is the biggest value add here because once you graduate from the boot camp, you actually do need to talk to someone who's experienced and who can give you feedback and help you code review and stuff like that. So the career mentors will be very helpful, and that's additional 6 months of support. Let's say the boot camp is 3 months, and after graduation, you get 6 months of career support, as well as 6 months of real client projects. So, and we're not charging more fees, so it's a really good deal. We don't have in-class programs. It's kind of hard to do in-class programs because students from are typically from different cities and different countries as well. When you work on real client projects, we're based in Toronto, but the clients might be from the US, maybe from different cities in Canada. So remote is good. It works out for us, and most of the students also don't want to commute every day because it may take them like an hour and a half or 2 hours to get to the school. We do have physical location, but we just do everything online now. Cool. Oh, it's almost 10. I think I went over time, but thanks for all the great questions, and I hope my answers to these questions are helpful. The recordings will be uploaded to YouTube, maybe on Monday, so you can review that. And yeah, if you have any questions about our programs, we now have my emails, or you can go to WeCloudData.com and you can fill out the form and someone will reach out to you. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great evening and all the best with your job search.